Welcome back to Rad City Resin. When I was a kid, I absolutely lived for art class. Once a week, my classmates and I marched down to the library into a room full of boxes of every kind of bit and bob under the sun. There were toilet paper rolls, finger paint, Christmas wrapping, old magazines. There were so many random supplies that to an 8-year-old looked like absolute treasure. To anyone else, it looked like somebody forgot to take out the recycling. It was in this chaos of ordinary things that I learned to take inspiration from what an item could be instead of just looking at it for what it was. Now, some hobbies, including resin, can require a lot of expensive or specialized tools, but sometimes the best tools are right in your own home. Today, I'm going to show you 2 very inexpensive items that I always have in my craft stash. First up is this bag of foam hair rollers. I bought these from my local Dollar Tree for about $1.25, and they're incredibly useful in crafting. They have a metal rod inside that allows you to bend them into shape, and I love to use these as a dowel to prop up ring blanks as I fill in the bezel. So here I placed my ring blanks on the roller, then I bent it in half to allow it to stand on its own. This lets me free up my hands for other needs like mixing my resin or adding inclusions. I added a few drops of resin to each bezel, then used my silicone tool to spread it along to each edge. I gave this a cure for about 45 seconds. Next, I added a few drops of Picasso blue-green alcohol ink into each bezel. You can let this air dry, or if you're really careful, you can use a lighter to burn off the alcohol, leaving the pigment behind. If you try that, please be extremely careful. Now, I liked the way this looked, but I was really wanting the green to be a lot more vivid, and I have some chrome nail powders that I thought would be perfect for this. Again, just as always, all of the supplies will be listed down in the description below. So if you see something you like, I'll definitely have a link for it for you. So I picked the bright green powder and used an eyeshadow applicator to apply it all over the alcohol. I really love the intense bright green color and the kind of like shiny metal effect of it. Just a little bit of this powder really goes a long way. Now, I picked out a few little dried flowers that I got in a resin starter kit. A lot of the resin starter kits actually come with these little flowers. I'll link the one I got down below in the description. And while you're checking out those links, be sure to like and subscribe. I release new episodes every Thursday. I trimmed off a few pieces of the different flowers I picked out. I poured out a little bit of resin on the side here to dip the flowers in because this helps to reduce the amount of bubbles that tend to gather around your inclusions. I put a small dab of resin into the bezel, then let it spread around, then very gently added my flower pieces. This part is really just trial and error, pushing the flowers around, creating a composition that looks good to you. I actually didn't like the first arrangement I made, so I plucked the stem out, then added a little flower bud instead. Unless you've already cured your piece, you can always make changes. There are no rules. This looked so pretty in contrast to the vivid green background. You know, resin is all about being creative, and it's super easy to get caught up in making everything look perfect. But, you know, even glass has bubbles sometimes, so don't sweat it at all if you get a few here or there. They really do add a little sense of charm. Once I cured the flower into place, the next step is to slowly build up a dome over the flowers. Now, there are a ton of different ways to do this, but this is the method I like to use. I slowly go around adding resin drop by drop into all of the crevices around the different pieces of flower. I add 1 or 2 drops, then cure. Now, this is tedious, but I want to make sure that I'm getting all of those empty areas. Depending on the flowers you use, building up the dome can take a little bit of time, especially if you're going slowly like this. Now that I've got all the resin built up enough, I want to make sure I dome over the surface to even everything out. I have this little plastic cup that I fill with resin, and then slowly and very carefully, I'm going to dip the ring into the resin so that just the face makes contact with the resin. If you've ever glazed a donut or a cupcake or something like that, you'll know this technique. Basically, I just dunk it straight down, just the face of the ring to touch the resin. I pull it back up and I let the resin drip a couple of times just to kind of get rid of the excess. Then, very quickly, I flip it upright. Because of the viscosity of the resin, it will stay put, but you definitely want to work fast when you're doing this. I immediately cured this for 1 full minute. I repeated this process several times until the resin covered the flower. One thing to keep in mind is that in this process, the resin will also cover the metal frame. Now, I like the way this looks, but if you prefer not having the metal frame covered in resin, you'll want to use a different method. And these rings turned out so cute. I love the late spring, early autumn vibes so much. Now, on to the next tool. Now, the next tool I keep on hand is my trusty silicone spatula. Just like in the kitchen, a silicone spatula is super versatile when working with resin. Here, I use the handle to scoop out some UV resin gel. This gel is typically used in nail art, but it's just as useful for jewelry. So I plop the gel onto my silicone pad, and then I use the paddle of my spatula to roll it around into a ball. This works super well. Then I turn that ball into a long, thin cube just by moving the spatula back and forth. Now, you may already be guessing what I'm trying to make here. I take the silicone tube and I wrap it around the handle of the spatula and create a cute little snake. The only detail that I'm going to add for this go around is just to give him a face. You can add a lot of different interesting details into this gel. It holds its shape really nicely before you cure it. So you can really make things very, very accurate to life. Once I'm happy with his little smushed nose, I cure the whole thing very well for about 3 full minutes. Just like with UV resin, this resin gel stays a little bit soft and tacky while it's warm, so I'm going to take great care not to touch it until it's completely cool. I decided to use 2 more of my nail powders to add some color. I started with this very intense blue color. It's so pretty, but as I was adding it, I didn't really like how dark it was, so I brushed off as much pigment as I could and tried again with this holographic silver powder. To finish off my snake, I added a UV nail top coat over the powder. For my final project, I'm bringing back those curlers and an honorable mention tool, a tiny box. Now be honest, go to the comments and tell me how many of these little spare boxes you have that are just waiting for you to get some inspiration. We're all guilty. I'm going to take the metal rod out of the center of each roller, and then I'm going to roughly measure the width of my box with the foam roller, and then I'm going to snip the roller to fit that width. Then, once I'm sure it fits right, I'm going to use that as a template to cut more rollers until I have enough to go the full length of the box. Now, as much as I love neon green, I wanted this to be a little bit more elegant so that what I'm putting into the box is going to stand out more so than the foam rollers. And luckily I have some lovely black velvet ribbon swatches from a few Halloweens ago. I keep everything. I snipped enough ribbon to wrap around the foam roller, and then again, I used that first square that I cut out to measure and cut enough to wrap all of the foam rollers for my little box. To keep everything in place, I used some 20 gauge craft wire to thread through the ribbon, then the foam roller, then the other side of the ribbon, creating a sort of kebab skewer. I did this with each foam roller. Then once I had them all threaded, I folded the wires around the back to secure everything in place. Now, I know this looks crazy right now, but trust me. I lined everything up as well as I could, then pushed the whole thing into the box. Now you can still kind of see the green on the sides. So I took another swatch of ribbon, cut that in half, and then I used this little thin piece of plastic to push it down into the side. And I left a little bit of the cloth above to hide the edge of the foam. You could use a plastic gift card to do this too. And I just repeated the process again on the other side. And here we go, a cute little ring display for all the resin rings you're going to make in the future. Like they say, one man's recycling is a crazy crafter's prized supply. I don't make the rules, I'm just here to tell you about them. If you had fun with today's project, I hope you'll hit the like button and let me know down in the comments. It really, really means the world to me to hear from you each week and to see what you're making. So, that being said, go make something cool today. Until next week, stay rad. If you liked this tutorial, check out my resin tutorial playlist.